Hello, welcome to Tea with Me. It's your host, Lakeisha Beeler. And this session that I want to discuss tonight is more a question and answer and it's going to be a series on the Akashic Records, your ancestors, and your life's purpose. And the reason why I'm focusing on all three is because within different religions and different traditions, there's different terminology that's used. And sometimes it'll throw us off a little bit. But when you understand what it is, then you can start drawing correlations between these particular topics, like the Akashic Records. People that believe that we live multiple lifetimes and we repeat cycles, not just in this particular body and lifespan, but from previous lifetimes, and that we will relive cycles and lessons over and over again until we break like karmic patterns, karmic debt. And we're here to pretty much pay off karmic debt and work those things out. Now, when you also talk about ancestors, so that's one, like there's a Buddhists that believe in multiple lifetimes. Hindus believe that. There's other traditions that believe that too. Typically, like in religions like Christianity, they don't believe in reincarnation in multiple lifetimes. But when you read the text, the Bible, you will see and you will hear scriptures and hear people say the sins of the fathers will fall to the children. Now, when you're reading this at face value, it looks as you can compare it to the Akashic Records, reincarnation, and repeating cycles, meaning that in your lifetime, if your parents, or let's say your foreparents, your ancestors committed certain sins, then those things will fall on the children to be lived out and to be worked through. Well, it's similar like with the Akashic Records or reincarnation, but instead of a child or descendants of an ancestor living out the debt or the karma of previous generations, it is that person that is reliving again to work out that karmic debt or those sins of previous lifetimes. So when you compare the two, you see that there's this similar spiritual understanding that in this particular lifespan that we're in, our soul is on a journey. And even when you look at the Akashic Records and when you look at the past sins of your ancestors and so forth, it is the same thing. At the end of the day, it's the soul's journey, the soul evolving and breaking, like you'll hear people say, breaking generational curses. Like in the Christian tradition, it's pretty much the same thing. What you're doing is you are stopping the repeating of a negative cycle by being conscious and aware of this particular sin, this wrongdoing, and taking necessary steps to break it so that it won't be repeated, either by you in a subsequent lifetime if a person believes in reincarnation, or your descendants if a person does not believe in reincarnation, to say that particular sin or that problem will fall down to the next generation. Well, then let's dig deeper into that particular philosophy of Christians that don't believe in reincarnation, but believe in sin, but do not believe that the sin of the forefathers will fall on the descendants. Because if you read the Bible, there are certain scriptures that say that shall not be used anymore. So some people follow that to say, well, in the Bible, it said the sin is going to fall on the children. And other people say, well, that's old. That was done away with, and they'll have a scripture to back that up. But so for the school of thought that says, well, that doesn't apply any longer, where the sin of the forefathers fall on the children. Well, but there are still things called generational curses. So if you look at generational curses and you compare it to habits, meaning that, let's say, for instance, in a certain family, let's just look at science. Let's say alcoholism falls, is something that a particular family deals with. Or let's talk about diabetes or heart disease or cancer. These are scientifically proven that if cancer runs in families, it's a high rate, or let's say, any other disease, it's a high rate that it will go on to subsequent generations. Alcoholism, you can relate it to things like that, diseases, but you can also relate it to bad habits, because what happens is cycles are repeated and habits are repeated because children are watching parents, siblings are watching, you pick up on certain things, you're living out what you've experienced. So when you make this comparison between Akashic Records, the soul's journey in multiple lifetimes, the sins of the forefathers falling onto the children, so ancestors to their descendants, or you look at generational curses, or if you want to use scientific language, you look at repeating habits or diseases. What you're looking at across the board in these different philosophies is the breaking of bad habits, the breaking of sins, the breaking of karma in this lifetime. So regardless if a person believes in reincarnation or not, the main focal point is what you do in this particular lifespan in order to further your family line. So it takes the selfishness off of me. You see, off of me. This is what's focused. I'm focusing on me. This is my life. But to say, you know what, if I make certain choices or not make certain choices, this can ultimately impact those that come after me, or for people that don't have children. You can still break even if you don't have descendants that come after you, you can break habits. You can break particular, using the spiritual language, generational curses. So Akashic Records and understanding of ancestral DNA is the understanding and the commitment to a goal in going back to the past, rectifying something or some wrongdoing in the past to correct it, so that those that come after and or those that are connected to an individual will not have to suffer some of the consequences of that particular issue running from generation to generation or from person to person. So this is the first topic in this series. I'm going to talk more about the Akashic Records, more about the ancestral DNA and the soul's journey, and how and habits, and why it's important to break these particular curses, generational curses, to restore, to undo some of the things that have been passed down from previous generations in order to clear, so to speak, the karmic debt, or clean up, break generational curses, whatever language you're comfortable with. But the goal is the same thing. And the commitment has to be as strong. The person has to have the same type of level of commitment when they're committing to their soul's journey, to say, when I reincarnate, or I don't want to reincarnate, because some people believe in certain traditions that if you work your journey out, your spiritual journey out, then you don't have to come back. You don't reincarnate. Others believe you reincarnate, but you'll reincarnate as an ancestor, so forth and so on. Some don't believe you reincarnate, you go to heaven. But at the end of the day, it is what you do with this particular lifespan that dictates whether or not you reincarnate, you do not reincarnate, or if you do reincarnate, you reincarnate with a clearer record, so to speak, And those that don't believe in reincarnation, the attainment of heaven. That is all contingent on the same application and the same goal as far as the spiritual journey. So again, this is the first in this particular series, and I will follow it up. The next one I may do a live, so you can do a question and answer. So look out for those. But you can check out my podcast. You can go to my website always and check those out, www.lakeishabeeler.com.